So, funny story. This was originally going to be a Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light review, but I don't think I'm going to finish that game anytime soon, because, well, I suck. Really bad. The review's still happening, I just have no idea when. Anyways, unlike last time, this will be a surprise to absolutely nobody who knows me. I am a fighting game nut. The complexity of the gameplay and the surprisingly interesting tales these games can tell. For better or for worse, of course. King of Fighters is a series of 2D fighting games created by SNK starting in 1994 as a bit of a Super Smash Bros. Before Smash Bros., including many characters from their various arcade games. For some reason, it's not super popular in the States as far as I can tell, which is weird as it's a very good series, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. From 1994 to 2003, a game was released every year, and you thought Call of Duty and Pokemon were bad. Unlike those series, however, it never really caught up to them. But that's jumping a bit ahead. King of Fighters has never been my favorite fighting game series. I'm more of an artsist guy personally, but I still derive a lot of enjoyment from it with its surprisingly deep narrative and tight gameplay. It's definitely made a pretty nice addition to my ever-growing collection of games. I have a problem, please send help. There are an absurd number of these games, and I own just about all of them, and play through them on occasion. Today I've decided to talk about the original arc of the series, the Orochi Saga. For 3 reasons. 1, as you've guessed, I want to do the KOF games. 2, it would take way too long to do all of them in one video, especially when 12 is in the mail and I don't have any motivation to get 14 right now. 3, each of these games are so short that the video wouldn't be long enough on its own to be worth it, especially because not a whole lot tends to change between games. Just note that I will be talking about 94 and 98 in this video, despite not technically being part of the saga, simply because I want to do all of them in one video, and 94 and 98 do not warrant their own videos. Okay, 98 might be able to do it, but it's my call here. I technically should have done Fatal Fury first, but I know more about KOF, so I figured I'd do that. I will be playing the arcade archive versions of this game on Switch, and will be playing with both a Pro Controller and a fight stick. Now without further ado, let's choose your fighters and fight our way through the Orochi Saga. Please note that I am not a competitive player, therefore I will probably get some stuff wrong. Also note that I am mainly judging these games based off their single player content, as these are very old games which probably don't see much tournament play as far as I know, as well as my personal opinion that a game should always be able to hold up single player wise no matter what kind of game it is, unless it's online only. Also, couch multiplayer is always the best way to play a fighting game, so that just wouldn't be fair. Our story begins with King of Fighters 94. Various SNK characters and a few new ones are sent invitations to the latest King of Fighters tournament by a mysterious person who signs the letter as R. These include, but are not limited to, Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury, Athena from Psycho Soldiers, Ralph and Clark from Ikari Warriors, and newcomer Kyo Kusanagi. They, as well as the other fighters who have received the invitations, come together into teams of 3, each hoping to claim the glory at the end of this worldwide tournament. About midway through the tournament, the host of the tournament will comment on the team the player has chosen, and after defeating every other team in the game, must have been a round robin, the winning team is invited to meet the host of the tournament, Hugo Bernstein, on his aircraft carrier, the Black Noah. where it is revealed that his reason for throwing the tournament was to find strong opponents to fight so that after he beats them, he could encase them in metal to become statues for his collection of defeated fighters. The The teams respond appropriately, then the final battle begins. The fight itself is overall pretty easy. Well, as easy as 94 can be, its AI is pretty easy to cheese. So as you think you've finally beaten the game, Rugal gets right back up and says he will now fight with full strength, and then the jacket comes off. The real battle starts now. Rugal will then proceed to kick your sorry ass for the next few hours as he unleashes his devastating moveset, including Gieshauer's Reppuken, Kaiser Wave, God Press, a Reflector, and his most notorious move, Genocide Kata. I am so glad I'm not playing this on actual arcade hardware, or I'd be out of money. After you finally beat him, he takes it well, by blowing up the airship. You then get your ending based off what team you chose. Also, if you play as Kyo's team, when you make it to Rugal, it's revealed that he killed Kyo's father before you got there. Overall, pretty simple story for a very simple game. It never tries to be anything too crazy, which is surprising considering what the series would become. Graphically, this game holds up pretty well in my opinion. It's not anything special, obviously, but it still looks nice enough. The sprite work is pretty cool. I like the cutscenes in this game. Sure, they're practically slideshows, but considering the time, it's pretty neat, even if the dialogue comes off a little cheesy at times. I'm personally not the biggest fan of the soundtrack in this one. The only songs that really stuck out to me were the Ikari team theme, Psycho Soldiers, and Rugal's music. Not to say that's bad, it just didn't resonate with me. Now for gameplay, KOF is a 4-button fighting game that revolves a lot around the neutral game. Your 4 buttons are Light Punch, Light Kick, Strong Punch, and Strong Kick. You can use a power attack by pressing Strong Punch and Kick together, dash by double tapping the stick in that direction, use special moves by performing specific actions on the stick and pressing the corresponding button. You can also perform a super special move by using more advanced inputs, however you can only use them under certain conditions. Those being when your life bar is flashing red, or when your power gauge is maxed out. You can charge your gauge by holding Light Punch, Strong Punch, and Light Kick together. When the gauge is maxed out, your attacks will do more damage than normal. You can also do this defensive action apparently, but I can't get it to work for the life of me. Pretty standard stuff. You block by moving backwards and all the other fighting game tropes, such as grabbing by pressing one of the heavy attack buttons and forward when close to the enemy. However, what sets KOF apart is the team-based combat. At the beginning of each playthrough, you pick one of the A teams of 3 available. You heard me right, one of the teams available. Unlike most games, you select a preset team of 3 fighters. This is probably the biggest flaw with 94. Thankfully, at least on the arcade version of the game, you can change the game to play 1v1 fights, which I did because I only like playing a few of the characters. I know this is technically cheating, but I don't care. Back on track. Unlike games like Marvel vs. Capcom, where you can tag out characters at will, KOF is a survival battle, with each member of the team is pitting against each other in a 1v1 fight where the winner stays and the loser is knocked out. This continues until one team is out of characters. There are also these team attacks you can use once per round, but I couldn't use them because I had it set to 1v1 mode. But none of these cause any gameplay issues. The dodge, on the other hand, is straight up obnoxious. Essentially, it lets you avoid all attacks and projectiles just by pressing Light Punch and Light Kick together, and the AI loves abusing this. This is one of the worst mechanics I've ever seen in a fighting game. It's really hard to explain why this irritates me so much. You'll probably have to play the game and understand. It's just, imagine every time you go turn on a light switch, it moves on you or something like that. Another thing that bothers me is the timer. It's way too short at only 60 seconds per round. This is an issue spanning the entire series as far as I know, and it's annoying that it started all the way at the beginning. The combo system uses links, by the way. I can't tell you how easy they are as there's no combo counter. I'll admit to not being a big fan of links, more of a chain combo guy personally, but it's a system that stood the test of time, so who am I to judge? So that about sums up King of Fighters 94. There's only one thing left to talk about, the difficulty. This game is brutal. I did my playthrough on the lowest setting and this game still put up a huge fight. I have actually made it to Rugal max difficulty, but that was only by cheesing the AI to no end with Athena. Useless trivia that nobody cares about. This game is the reason I play Athena. I normally like to judge a fighting game's difficulty based off the highest level for single player, but this game was so hard that I had to play it on the lowest setting. So, would I recommend 94 to be your first KOF game? Well, no. The main reason being the set teams and the ridiculous difficulty. Is it still a fun game? Yes, I just recommend playing the other games in the series first. KOF 95. Once again, various people from around the world have been called to participate in yet another King of Fighters tournament. Once again, signed R. Yeah, Rugal's back and he wants his revenge. You see, he survived the exploding aircraft carrier by using a power known as the Orochi, which he has used to enhance his abilities. Once he kidnaps the winning team, he sticks a now roboticized version of Kyo's father on the player, and after the player wins, he hulks out and challenges the player himself once more. And boy does he want that revenge, as he's somehow even worse than he was back in '94. Too bad his theme isn't that great in this game. After the player wins after several hundred attempts, he tries to use the full power of the Orochi and self-destructs, ending 95. Okay, so this one was slightly more interesting than the last one. Unlike the last game, which was very self-contained, 95 sets up events that would be expanded upon in later titles, with the mystery of this new power, but other than that, this was pretty by the numbers. As for gameplay, nothing has really changed too much between games, with the main differences being the inclusion of new characters such as the much beloved Yori Yagami. Yeah, this actually doesn't do much for me, but I understand why people like him. And new moves and balance changes. There's this new dodge attack and they removed the team attacks, but other than that, the only thing I've noticed is that you can finally use a custom team. Well, you couldn't do this in '94 is beyond my comprehension, but it's a thing now. Just like last time, there are team-specific endings, as well as a new generic one for when you use a custom team. I'm not going over any of these endings because I don't hate myself enough to go through this game with characters I don't know how to play. One thing to note is that once again, the difficulty is somehow, at least with Rugal, just as high, if not worse than '94. The AI will now actually combo you and is extremely grab happy. This is the kind of game where your attacks get punished for landing. So once again, I can't really recommend it to first-time players. On the bright side, the music has improved a lot. Well, at least during fights, I'll admit I'd rather listen to '94 in isolation, and the overall game flow and speed has improved. KOF 96. Once again, a KOF tournament is held, this time by Chizuru Kagura in order to gather the ones who have the power of the three sacred treasures of Japan, who are herself, Kyo, and Yori, in order to stop Orochi. You know that power Rugal had? Yeah, that was part of a god's power, and Chizuru is in charge of keeping the seal on it intact. But the seal's been broken, and the god is starting to awaken, and after this is revealed, the one who broke the seal, Gainitz, that's how the game says it, appears, hoping to destroy the three treasure users to prevent them from stealing Orochi again. The player defeats him and he offs himself, ending the catastrophe and the game. Finally, some actual gameplay changes. KOF 96 gets rid of that abominable sidestep dodge, replacing it with a roll. This can be used to go through projectiles and cross up enemies, but it's actually punishable, so I'm not about to complain. It also finally gets rid of the step dash and gives us an actual run. Thank you so much, SNK. I've been waiting for a faster movement option that wasn't just begging for me to get punched. The game is generally sped up a pretty good amount in my honest opinion. Of course, new teams have been added, and including a sub-boss team made up of Fatal Fury bosses. Other than that, everything's about the same as it's always been. Which, when that's the worst thing you can say about a game, I'd say that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The difficulty level has finally been brought down to a decent level, meaning I can actually play it on max without losing my mind. With the sole exception being the final boss who can create tornadoes out of nowhere. So I chased him with Athena. I am a sucker for this kind of bullshit, but just be warned, the bosses are only going to get worse from here. 96 is probably the first KOF game I'd say is truly good. Don't get me wrong, I like 94 and 95, but they just have a few little things holding them back for me. 94 is to set teams in the dodge, and 95 still has the dodge and cranks up the difficulty to an absurd level even on the lowest setting. To put it in perspective, level 896 is equivalent to level 195. The only reason I beat Omega Rugal is because I got the perfect run. End of story. I actually like absurdly difficult games, that's why I stuck with it till the end, but I'm not most people, and most people would probably rage quit long before they even get to the first Rugal cutscene of the game. The timer is still way too short, but it's more manageable in this game due to the game speed increasing once again. Although I doubt you're gonna pull off any 1 HP in your dreams because of it. I'd actually say this is a decent starting point for the series. Also, they finally added a combo counter, which as someone who loves games with complex combo systems, this is a nice addition. KOF 97. Despite the catastrophe caused by Gayness at the end of the last game, the tournament was enough of a success that another one was being held. This tournament for the most part proceeds smoothly until after it ends when Yori is suddenly thrown into a rage by Orochi and challenges the player. It's a pretty easy fight by SNK boss standards, his main advantage being a massive increase in speed. If the player has Yori on their team, they will fight Leona instead. After the player wins, it is revealed that newcomers Chris, Shermie, and Yashiro, I think that's how you say it, are actually the remaining priests of Orochi and have been using the tournament to gather energy in order to fully awaken Orochi, and challenges the player, saying it doesn't matter who wins the fight, as the fight will supply the final bit of energy needed for the complete awakening. The battle with the Orochi New Faces team is a pretty fun one, starting off with Chris, then Shermie, and finally Yashiro. Each of them being cheap in their own way. Chris has an unblockable attack and an extremely strong projectile, Shermie has a stationary projectile that stuffs out most approaches, and finally Yashiro has extremely damaging command grabs and will block just about everything. I actually enjoyed coming up with the best strategy for beating them. Of course, most of that strategy was abusing the AI's inability to deal with spamming Athena to save up meter for Yashiro, but it was still fun nonetheless. Seriously, Athena breaks the bosses of the earlier KOF games. Shame it stopped working around the time the Nest Saga started. The player defeats them, but as they said, the awakening could not be stopped, and Orochi is revived using Chris as its vessel, and so begins the final battle. On paper, Orochi is the strongest boss in the entire KOF series, with his unjump-overable fireballs and out-of-nowhere lightning strikes, as well as a full-screen super that does insane damage. The problem is that its AI is pretty stupid, meaning it's a pretty simple fight once you realize you can just get up in its face and wail on it. Seriously, it does not know what to do against Dragon Punches. It's a pretty fun fight, if a bit easier by SNK standards, and Origin of Mind is a kick-ass song. Anyway, the player wins and Orochi returns to sleep, ending with a horribly translated monologue by the narrator. The whole game is horribly translated, to be honest, to the point that it reads really bad. But it's readable at least, so that's something. I actually bothered to go back and get the true ending by playing as the Sacred Treasure team. It's pretty much the same thing, except with a lot more details and a lot more satisfying. I'd say this is a nice little wrap-up to the storyline. It's nothing special, obviously, but it's still a nice finale. Gameplay-wise, there has been a complete overhaul of the meter system in max mode. Now the player has the option to select either advanced or extra mode. In advanced mode, the meter acts as a traditional meter from most other fighting games, where it fills up by attacking and being attacked, and can store up to 3 charges, which can be used for either supers or max mode. While extra mode functions the way meter has always been in the past KOF games, and brings back the godforsaken sidestep. Thankfully the AI will never use extra mode, so it's not a big deal. They also changed the inputs for a few supers if anyone cares. Other than that, it's pretty much the same game. Difficulty-wise, it's all over the place. Sometimes you get opponents like Athena who will make you want to throw your controller with her stupid command grab spam, but other times you'll walk right through the game. I'd say this is the best one by far, by a long shot, and I think every fighting game fan should play it at least once. It's also the first in the series not to require you to beat every other team in order to get to the boss, so it's a little shorter than the previous 3. And that's the Orochi Saga. Overall, pretty entertaining set of games with a pretty simple storyline that will for the most part keep you engaged. The gameplay is extremely simple, with the only thing that will really test you from an execution standpoint being combos and some supers, but with a very high difficulty from an arcade mode standpoint. We still have one game left, and that's KOF98. I'm not going to dwell on the story here, as well there is none. The game was really just an excuse to have just about every character so far go at it, and gameplay-wise, it's just an excuse to bring back most of the previous fighters, including the American sports team. And you don't mess with a guy named Brian Battler. There's also this new advantage system which increases the number of charges your meter can have depending on how many characters you have left. It brought about the continue service system where you can choose to spin a roulette wheel to try and make the game easier when you die. Yeah, I think I finally realized how absurdly difficult these games are. Although it can come off as more of a screw you to experienced players, or at least it does to me. And that's really it. I wonder who the final boss is. No, there's no way. Well, there's only one way to do this, and that's to do it. The last thing I'm going to do is talk about the PC version of 98. 98 Ultimate Match Final Round. From what I can tell, it's just more 98 with all the characters and bosses back. It also has a new meter system called Ultimate, which seems to be a hybrid between Advanced and Extra. I've heard people say that 98 is the best game in the series, and this is probably the best way to play the game. So, enjoy! This game is an amazing entry point for the series. I know I stopped talking about the graphics and music after 95. That's because for the most part it's just iterative improvements for each subsequent game, so there just wasn't really anything to talk about, and I didn't really leave any suggestions on how to fix things because the series for the most part already rectified them. Also, it controls pretty well on both pad and stick if anyone cares. I know I also left out various cheats and extra endings beside the Sacred Treasure endings in 97, but there really isn't much to say there either. Pick certain groups of characters and you get a special ending. End of story. As for the cheats, they mostly just let you play as the bosses in P96 Kyo. Now I don't know about you, but I'm KOF'd out for a while. How about next time we do a non-fighting game, okay?